Let me blow this up, make it even a little bit bigger. Are you guys seeing the just one slide full screen, or are you seeing multiple?
Just the full screen, one slide.
Perfect. Well, guys, today is soft skills for HVACR, mostly refrigeration technicians, because that's what we do. We'll talk about a few things here, particularly about communication. You know, we spend the bulk of, and rightfully so, the bulk of time in this training about technical skills, right? You know, diagnosing, repairing, installing equipment. That's where I think our training's best spent, but we've carved out a class or two to talk about a few other aspects of being a technician. You know, fixing equipment is probably at the top of that list, but there's also a lot more, and increasingly in today's world, we're having to deal with a lot of portals and IVRs and check-in, check-out. You're constantly on the phone with the central ops team, you know, getting new calls or updating information. You may be back and forth emails with the company or your manager, text messages, phone calls. You're interfacing with customers, you know, all the time. And so there's a lot that goes on that's actually not related to, or it's related to, but it's not fixing equipment. And so we want to make sure we provide at least a little bit of training about some good tips. I will admit some of this information is, we call it soft skills for a reason. There's not a hard science behind how to best communicate, but there are some good tips and a lot of research done on how to do it. So we'll talk through that. I think most people stay on mute and appreciate that. It helps the broadcast go a little bit better, but this is a session that I'd love for people to comment and share some personal experiences and stories about these things, because I think that'll be, you know, more helpful than just reading through it. So with that little preface, I'll jump right into it. We're going to touch first on communication. We'll talk verbal and nonverbal listening using questions, how to deliver bad news. For some of you that are managers, that if you haven't had that opportunity yet, I'm sure it will come. And bad news is not fun, but a few tips on how to make it better. And then we'll touch on some professionalism, you know, really quickly, appearance, unwritten rules, and customer service. So first part here, verbal communication. Our man Robert Frost said, half the world is composed of people who have something to say and can't, and the other half who have nothing to say and keep on saying it. I like that. I think we run into this a lot. There's a lot of people out there that quietly go about their work, get things done. They seem to be, you know, wise, and then the other half of people that can't seem to shut their mouth and keep talking over and over and over again. At the end of the day, you know, best technicians are great communicators. They not only fix equipment, but they put customers and coworkers at ease by communicating the necessary details. If you're able to be the hero, you know, fix the equipment, take care of it, but not appropriately communicate what the issue was, how it was fixed, you know, what should be done in the future to prevent the issue, your customers may feel okay, but they won't feel great. If you can fix the equipment and then teach them a little bit and share with them about what happened, how to prevent it in the future, how to make it better, they will go bonkers, you know, as you're their technician. They'll request you again. So that's a key part of it. So a couple quick tips here. One is to assume good intent in all of our conversations. Son of a gun. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Did we lose the screen? Sorry.
No, I've still got the verbal communication screen up, but it's got the thumbnails on the left side now.
Sorry, my screen just dropped on me out of nowhere.
You gotta love technology.
We're still good here, Sean, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry guys, I apologize for that. anyways, in all of our conversations, assuming good intent from coworkers and customers is important. You know, it feels like most problems arise because of miscommunication, not malintent. And what I think this means is oftentimes we think people are out to get us. They're out to screw us over, make our lives difficult. You know, generally speaking, they're not. And they're just trying to get their job done, but somewhere some communication has broke down and it's caused some confusion, and often that confusion leads to problems. But if we come back, guys, to assume good intent, assume that, you know, our central operators are trying to get their job done, assume that their service manager, he's just trying to do what's right, you know, by the customer, by the company, by his crew. He's not trying to send you on the worst calls because he has it out for you and doesn't like your haircut. You know, we need to assume good intent in people, and the communication will be a lot better. Second tip here is talk like a schizophrenic. That sounds funny, but really the point is try to use we rather than you, especially when you're talking with you're facing, you know, some sort of issue or confrontation. Using the term we rather than you can ease tensions quite a bit with people. And so, you know, when you are speaking with people, whether it's over the phone, in person, using we rather than you helps, you know, alleviate some of that. Occasionally you do need to use you, right, and be direct. But if you're talking about an issue in general, spread some of the blame, if you will, and use we, and people will respect that and put them a little bit more at ease. Let's talk written communication real quick, guys. I looked this stat up. The average employee in today's world receives 120 emails and 94 texts per day. So, you know, I'm no mathematician, but I can do a little bit of math there. That's over 200, you know, messages per day. We're getting inundated, and that doesn't even include, you know, messages or other communication you might get in person, phone calls, stuff through, you know, service trade. There's a lot of communication that's just bombarding us constantly, and it seems to be getting worse and worse every year that we go on. We're becoming more and more plugged in, and so one of the questions is, how do we sift through all the noise and understand what's most important? Let me tell, I'll pick on Sean because he's been kind enough to speak up here a little bit. Sean, how do you communicate most frequently with your crew? Is it via phone calls, via text, via emails? How do you guys stay in touch?
It's actually a mixture of all three, depending on if it's one-on-one. I prefer a phone call method. If I need to get something out to the whole crew, we might do a group text or a mass email, or both, just to make sure everybody gets it.
Okay, that's great. I like that. Depending on what it is, phone calls tend to be more direct, you know, a little bit quicker, tend to be used for urgent things, and as Sean said, one-on-one communication. Emails and texts can be really good for group communication. You know, they're work order systems, in-person stuff, carrier pigeons, whatever you guys use. Today's world, you're going to have to use a mix of it, right? And I think even some of the older folks around have come a long ways in figuring out the technology. If you went back, you know, 10 years ago, not everybody was kind of up to speed on texting and emails, but pretty much everybody has, and it's a necessary part of what we do. It allows us to be efficient and to get a lot more done and to communicate a lot more, but it can be inundating. So one tip I've got here is to limit texting of employees, emergencies aside on this, limit texting and phone calls to employees to work hours. You know, this is especially helpful for you managers. Like, try to give your guys, once again, emergencies aside, but try to give them some space to unplug. You know, when they go home for the day or for the weekend, if they're not on call, it's important to have a little bit of time to kind of unplug from from work and the constant barrage of communication. So try to be conscious of that and limit that time to work hours. And some of you guys are thinking, well, look, in our business, work hours are 24/7, and I get it, people are, but just be conscious of that and try to keep it on to unplug. Second tip here is avoid reply all to group or company emails unless everyone needs to see the email. If you're just acknowledging that you got the email, if Sean sends a group email to his crew and I'm on his crew and I just want to acknowledge that I got it, that's fine, but just hit reply instead of reply all, so you're not, bombarding everybody else with that email. And then lastly, emails and texts can have confusing sentiment even when we use the proper amount of emojis. I would argue, especially when you use, a lot of emojis or pictures or memes or whatever, mostly because we don't have any body language. There's no tone. You can't see people's facial expressions. And so those emails and texts can have some confusing sentiment. So if you have important communication, I would recommend speaking over the phone or in person. It tends to get the message across a little bit better and not leave any confusion. By the way, we're talking about work here for training. If you want to, use these tips with your wife or your girlfriend or family members or whatever, that's on you. But please don't come back to me if it backfires at all. But this is some recommendation we're talking for work. Anybody have any questions on that before we skip on? Any thoughts?
No. Hey, Nick.
Yep.
The one thing I would say is that if you're texting or emailing or something like that, and it starts to get advantageous or aggressive, or you feel like something's being said, and you're putting intent on the other side, pick up the phone and make a phone call. It goes back to assume good intent. Assume that everybody has good intent, but if you're starting to feel threatened or starting to feel like something's getting heated up, a lot of times it's not. It might just be on your side. So pick up the phone call in those situations. Don't just assume someone's upset.
It's a great point, Al. I think it's easy, to be a tough guy when you're behind a keyboard, or sentiment just gets, confusing. Somebody misread a text or an email the wrong way, and now, some tempers have flared. So I like that, Al. A quick phone call can calm things down pretty quickly. All right, let's go to nonverbal communication. So much of our communication is nonverbal, meaning just it's outside the words that we use. In fact, one famous study claims that only 7% of our communication comes via words. I have no idea how they calculate that 7%, so don't hold me to it. But they think 7% comes from words, 38% comes from tone or volume, and 55% comes from facial and body expression. Once again, I don't know how they got these numbers, but the point we'll maybe take away is that there's a lot more beyond words that is important when we're communicating. I think this is particularly important to be aware of when we are face-to-face with customers. The tone, the facial, the body expression, the body language we use when we're with customers says a lot about us and how we're feeling and trying to express it. And even when we're tired or busy or whatever, I think we need to be conscious to not give, some of those facial or body clues that we're disinterested or upset with, particularly with customers. So here's a couple tips. Make and keep eye contact throughout a conversation. You've been hearing this since you were 4, but a good thing to remember. When speaking with coworkers, with customers, with vendors, whoever it is, try to remove distractions when you're having the conversation, particularly our phones. It could be something else, but you see this a lot, that it's so easy to become distracted. You may have a smartwatch that's buzzing, or you're checking the time. You may be looking at a text, trying to talk with somebody. We've all been on the other side of that, and it's not the biggest deal in the world, but it gives off the impression that you're not interested in the conversation at hand. You're more interested or have more important things to do, that's on your phone. So be conscious of that and try to, when you're in a conversation, be in a conversation. And when you're done, then, pick back up your phone and see whatever, text message came through. Last one here is just be conscious of body language and tone. These are things that we do naturally. Takes a lot of work to, focus on them, but people pick up on them. Let me pause here real quick. Any comments, any thoughts on nonverbal communication?
Yeah, maybe just one comment on the flip side of that. Sometimes we do have to talk to our customers, and like you say, we need to be mindful and not be answering our phones, et cetera, et cetera. The people on the other end of our phones need to also be mindful that if we don't answer the phone call, text management, everybody applies to this. If the texts aren't answering the phone call, it's not that they're ignoring you for no reason. They may, be tied up talking to a customer. They may be in a loud machine room. So the best thing you could do is leave a message and wait for them to call back. Don't blow their phone up with 43 different phone calls. That's not helping anybody. All that does is frustrate the technician or the manager and probably the store director that they're talking to at the time too, because your phone's interrupting your conversation the whole time. You know what I mean?
That's a great point, Sean. And I assume you're meaning outside of when I call you, because when I call you, you'll answer on the first call, right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I really like that, Sean. We should be pretty conscious of people. Well, look, we're everybody's busy and trying to get stuff done. And if somebody, doesn't answer a call or a text right away, there's probably a reason for it. So, if you need to leave a message or shoot them a text, let them know, but do that once, probably not 43 times. Is that fair?
Perfect.
Okay. I snagged this, guys. Just a quick tip on how to read body language. Not that any of us are trying to be, psychics here. I think this is most important for each of us to be aware and conscious of how we're, acting or the vibes that we're giving off. So like this first one, crossed arms, crossed legs tends to show a closed attitude, right? If you walk up to somebody, they got their arms crossed. Generally, that means they're not really open to talking for whatever reason, or they're feeling, defensive. And so be conscious of crossing your arms like that. Massaging the forehead means they're showing uneasiness, they're stressed out. So you see a store manager, you want to talk to them maybe about some deficiencies you found. Just be conscious of that. They may have a million things going on, and so you may want to wait a minute to give them a sec to calm down before talking to them. Gesturing while speaking, opening.
You're looking good, dude.
Torso turned away shows you're disinterested. I'm guilty of this. I'll start walking away like before the conversation's done, which is just a bad habit of mine, but it puts off a bad vibe to people if you're turned away. Touching nose indicates lying. I don't know. I've heard that from a lot of different people. I don't know, how true that is. Maybe their nose just itches, but according to this, that's a body language sign to be aware of. So
I know a growing nose indicates lying. I learned that from Pinocchio.
you're right on. So yeah, guys, once again, I'm not asking anybody here to be a mind reader via body language, but be conscious of what you're doing with your body when you're talking, with your manager, with customers, with whoever, that it is sending, some sort of signal, whatever it is. Active listening. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Wonder if that holds true for how many of us? Probably not me. Probably something I need to do better. To some people, listening is just waiting for their turn to talk. Nobody likes to talk with these people. So if you are in the middle of a conversation and find yourself formulating your response, your next sentence, means you're not being a good listener, right? And if you can actively listen, you can get to solutions, a lot more quickly. People that are closed-minded and don't want to collaborate, it's their way or the highway, are always formulating a response rather than listening. So take some time to listen, focus on what the other person is saying rather than formulating your own responses. Work to not interrupt, so try to not interrupt. And then one more good little tip here is after listening, reiterate the concept to ensure understanding. So for example, if somebody finishes telling you something, you may respond, if I heard you correctly, the issue is that, whatever, right? And they'll confirm, say, yeah, that's it, or no, you idiot, you were not listening. Let me repeat myself. And so just a good way to show people that you're listening, you care about it, and a good way to get to some pretty good communication. This will flow right into, and just a couple more slides here on this, guys, but using questions. So one who never asks either knows everything or knows nothing. We know nobody knows everything, so never ask questions simply means you're overestimating how much you know. Asking questions helps us to create clarity and prevent damage from miscommunications. So a few tips. If you're trying to explore and find more information, try to use open-ended questions, not yes or no questions. I do this with my kids after school, right? Instead of just saying, hey, did you have a good day at school? You'll get a one-word response, yes or no, out of most kids. But ask them, what did you do at school? Or, how did you feel about your friend at recess, whatever. Leave it open-ended so it's not yes or no, and they can give you a little bit more information. In the workplace, maybe if you're talking with a customer, you show up on a call, they just said the ice machine's not working. Well, you could ask them, can you describe to me what the equipment was doing, right? Give them a chance to maybe tell you what happened, if somebody flipped the switch, if it was making a noise, give them that opportunity to give you information that can hopefully save you time and be valuable. To your manager, if they put a bunch on your plate, say you're overloaded, you can ask, hey, how would you like me to prioritize this work or these service calls, right? Let them have an open-ended question to give you a little bit more information. If you're communicating information, kind of the flip side of that, it's better to kind of be the opposite. Use brief and direct statements, to a customer. Here's what happened. Give them the information. They probably don't need A to Z play-by-play, so give them the highlights. To central ops, same way. They may be dealing with a lot of different phone calls back and forth, so be conscious of that. Try to give them the information they need, but don't overload them, and let them, ask for more information if they need it. So let me pause here real quick. Any thoughts, any comments on these tips? I'll move on then. So delivering bad news. A lot of you guys don't know, but this is Jim Alexander when he was 8. This is his third grade picture, right, Al?
Yeah, exactly.
Just
Man,
kidding.
I was a good-looking kid.
Put a hat on that, and that's Jim.
Yeah, he's missing the hat. It's not actually Jim, but it's a good picture. Sometimes, guys, as managers, as technicians, as coworkers, as family members, whatever, sometimes you got to break bad news. So here's a few tips about how to communicate that well. So number one, be direct and informative. Don't hide or delay bad news. So don't raise the alarms if unnecessary. Don't oversell something if it's not actually that bad. But give people information in general. Sometimes we feel like we're protecting people by not telling them, the severity of the situation or the full truth. Try to stay away from that. Don't hide or delay bad news. If you're talking with a customer, they think their ice machine's just clogged up, but actually something worse is going on and the machine needs to be replaced. Like, give them the full story and be direct about it, and don't delay or hide or beat around the bush. Try to accentuate the positive and finish with good news if you can, right? Sometimes there's a silver lining, or the present might be gloom and doom, but the future is bright. So try to finish with that. Try to give them that information. And then when possible, try to focus on the issue or the behavior, not on the individual. If the bad news has to do with the person, you know, maybe their job is being terminated, or maybe you're correcting a mistake that they made in the field or whatever. That can be bad news, and people can take that pretty harshly. So try to focus on what the issue was, the behavior was, not on the person. Don't make it a personal attack on them. If you can do those things when you're bringing in bad news, those things tend to be helpful. Al, I know you've had to deliver bad news on multiple occasions. Any thoughts on this one?
I will say kind of the same thing. It doesn't do any good to hold off or try to sugarcoat it. The best thing is to be direct, give the news, and then, you know, after it's been delivered, you can take that time to try to, you know, console or deal with it. But it's just best, you know, a lot of times we don't want to, you know, have confrontation with, you know, a manager to a technician or you know, whatever. If you're having to let someone go, or if you're having to, you know, reprimand somebody for actions, it's best just to get that out of the way, say it, and then you can always build up and talk about, and like it says there, leave on a good note. Always say something good at the end, but it doesn't do any good to wait. Just get it out there.
People actually appreciate the fact that you were honest with them up front and allowed them the opportunity to kind of make that decision based on the information they're given it, even though it is bad. They're always more appreciative. After a lot of times the demons in our head kind of take over and we think that it's going to go really, really bad. But most of the time, in my experience, if you're just upfront with people, they actually take that as respect or appreciation for just being honest with them.
And the delivery is important too. You know, when you're telling something, don't be confrontational about it. Just be honest and tell the truth, and you'll get through it.
Yeah. So I like that, guys. Try to be upfront with people. People will respect that. Depending on what it is, also be conscious of just the method of communication you use, right? If it's something important, shooting it over on a text, probably not the right way to do it. You know, even in phone call might not be the right way to do it. So just be conscious of, how am I going to deliver this bad news? Is it in person? You know, is it via email or whatever? And
Like this, Nick, I think you did a horrible job presenting this today. I think we need to work on your skills. You have a nice voice. Maybe we can work on something else.
Maybe you should consider talk radio.
Yeah.
Al, I respect you for being so direct.
See, guys, it works. It works.
Not beating around the bush. Yeah, see, there we go. But yeah, look, if it hasn't happened already in the workplace, you know, it'll come the time where you're going to have to deliver some bad news, and be conscious of that, be direct, and treat people like adults. And in general, they'll respect it. They may disagree with you, Al, but they will appreciate you being direct. All right, guys.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, will someone mute Al's phone, please?
Nick, I would agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong.
You're right.
It wouldn't do any good to mute Al's phone. He'd just talk loud enough that you could hear him clear from wherever you are.
All right, guys, let's flip to kind of the second section here, shorter section of the two. So professionalism, talk appearance, unwritten rules, customer service. Let's talk, you know, professionalism, dress standard. I'm going to lean a lot to Al, Eric, Jim, you know, Sean, Shane, whoever else on the phone to give me a little bit of guidance here. What is CORE's, you know, standard for dress and uniform? And I'm gonna flow through a few things. The short answer is, well, it depends. Are you in the field? Are you in the office? Are you on a construction site? Are you on a service call? Are you on a rooftop? You're with a customer, whatever. Well, let's talk through some of that just to make sure we're on the same page. So shirt, jacket. Do I need to wear a shirt or jacket with the CORE logo? Who wants to take this one?
I would say yes. When you're at work, representing the company, you're walking through customers, even on construction sites, it's good for people to know who you are. A lot of times, if guys are walking into a Maverick or a Whole Foods and start walking around the back room or whatever, you start getting questions. But if you have that logo and people, you know, recognize that, it goes a lot smoother. Even on a construction site, it's less important on a construction site. A lot of times you're wearing high vis and hard hats and everything. But I even tell the guys, put the CORE or the ACE logo on your hard hat. Try to wear a shirt, and then, you know, represent. Unless, of course, you're being a douchebag, then, you know, put on a cold shirt or something.
Yeah, if you're committing a crime, don't wear the CORE logo. Yeah, guys. So Al kind of hit it there, and it depends. And in general, guys, I know our company is, I would say, on the more lax side of the spectrum in terms of kind of dress and uniform, meaning there's more freedom and liberty given to our employees. That doesn't mean do whatever you want. I think Jim and Keisha and others have gone to great lengths to provide a lot of different, uniform, shirt, apparel options, for people, and so there should be options out there, but be conscious of the logo you've got and try to make it, be something professional when you're on the work side. Shoes. Are work boots needed? Nikes or Vans okay? Who wants to take this one?
I can.
Okay. Jim, you there?
Thanks, Jim. That was very informative.
I would say no, because there's a lot of heavy stuff that we lift. You drop that on your foot,
Now, we need to be wearing steel-toed boots, or at least work boots in general. I know some guys, I see a lot of shoes out there that aren't steel-toe, but I'll be honest with you, steel-toes save me more often than not. So I would prefer steel-toe boots for any service technicians or project guys. I was out on a couple construction jobs yesterday in Albuquerque, and almost every contractor's wearing some type of steel-toe or a carbon fiber toe type boot. I know the guys, I've seen them wearing Vans and stuff, and I get it that we're on our feet all day long and they're more comfortable. But, if you guys are doing any of the big market work or whatever, and you end up putting a V-body on top of your foot, that'll change your mind real quick. So we want to be mindful about what we're wearing. I wear sneakers from time to time as well when I know that I'm not going to be, in machine rooms all the time. So just be mindful of your surroundings, but more often than not, you guys should be kind of focusing on having a nice pair of work boots. I've seen a couple guys called out on jobs for not wearing the right footwear on a job. And it is required that you wear steel-toed or high top type work boots on construction jobs.
What I would say, guys, is that, I know you guys drive a lot. There's a lot of driving involved, and steel-toed boots and work boots aren't the most comfortable for driving. So I keep a pair of steel-toed boots in the truck. If I don't have them on, I have them in the truck. In case I get to a site or get to somewhere where I need them, then it's a quick swap out and put those on. I also always keep a clean shirt. It's always good to walk up to a customer after you've done a job. And I know we get greasy and dirty, but sometimes you just pull a mechanic shirt over the top of your other shirt, or quickly, swap it out and then walk up so you look presentable to the people. But safety's a really big concern here. We want you guys to go home. We want you to go home with all your, fingers and toes. So if you don't want to wear steel-toed boots, I suggest you have a set in the truck.
Yeah, it's kind of pointless to show up on a job with a hard hat and safety glasses and Vans.
And in Eric's case, flip-flops.
No, just be mindful, guys. I mean, like I said, we try to be lax about what we require because of, we know how much you guys work. We know how much you're in the trucks. We know how much, how difficult boots can be after 12 hours of being in them. So just be mindful of that. And like Al said, if you have opportunities to ditch the boots and put on a more comfortable pair of shoes while you're traveling or whatever, but then you have the boots in the truck, that would be best. But we as a company prefer a steel-toed or carbon fiber-toed boot to be worn on the job site.
All right, guys, that's good counsel. Thanks for that. And look, looking professionals important to us and the company, but everybody's safety is by far more important. So that's something to definitely be aware of. I also know for those of you that struggle, tying laces, doing the little loops and bunnies around the tree, Al has some Velcro boots, right, Al? Where he just has to Velcro.
They're kangaroos. They're awesome. And then they have a little pocket in them. You can put a quarter in case I got to call somebody.
Yeah, he has a hard time with laces, so that there is some that accommodate that. Protective gear. So outside of boots, high vis stuff, hard hats, glasses. What's the recommendation here, Jim and Al, on that?
In 2018, a lot of people couldn't see wearing safety glasses, and now they just can't see.
Oh God, you've been hanging on to that one.
I use that a lot.
That's how I started that.
Jim, take away his damn phone.
No, guys, protective gear is becoming more and more. OSHA's on us. We are we're making a wave here in the West. We're becoming a large company. It's super important that we have our PPE with us when we're welding, when we're working on job sites. Everybody should have a hard hat, safety glasses, gloves in the truck. They should be wearing shaded goggles when they are welding. I see a lot of guys. I even have stopped doing it. I for years and years and years have welded without goggles. I don't care if you throw on a pair of polarized glasses. It's still better than looking at with your bare eyes. So you guys need to make sure that you have shaded safety goggles and regular safety goggles. We need to be wearing our PPE when we're working. It's becoming a big problem and a big concern for the company. We need to make sure that we're keeping at least have them on the trucks, because you just never know when you're going to be going to the next job that you're going to need that stuff.
Okay.
Please make sure there's a safety kit. Yeah, please make sure there's a first aid kit in your van.
Hey, Jim, at one point we had a survey go out asking who had what, and it kind of made it seem like we were going to get safety kits built and sent to our branches to put in our vans. Whatever happened with that?
I will find out, because that was the intent of that. So if that didn't get followed through, I will find out, because yes, we do want to make sure, like as a leadership team, especially from your standpoint, Sean, as a service manager, you need to make sure that even when we're bringing on new guys, or even on a regular basis, we need to check and make sure, like Eric said, they got the first aid kit in case if something happens on the job. They got the safety glasses. I like to have a shaded pair of safety glasses, as well as the clear pair, a hard hat, and that the hard hat is a regulation hard hat. And then we like them with the high vis vests. They don't need to have a high vis shirt per se, but we need to have that vest on there, because we have guys going on projects all the time, back and forth, or stepping on a job site where, OSHA shows up and we need to have that stuff, and they'll check the truck for it. So we just want to make sure. I will find out on the survey, but if it didn't get followed through on, I will get it back out there, and we need to make sure that we kind of take it upon ourselves at branch level to make sure those vans have that stuff.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, guys. Next one here, probably a more minor one relative to what we've been talking about, but when is it okay to wear a hat or not?
Always.
Always.
Church, bed, church.
Yeah.
Look, that's probably the right answer in what we do, and hats can be protective, especially in the summertime. If you do have a customer or something that's somebody that's sensitive to that for whatever reason, I don't think that's the case. I think that'd be rare, but watch out for it. But in general, hats are a thumbs up.
Yeah, and to anybody on the call that's fairly new to the company, we provide a regular, ball cap, but we also provide a sun hat with a full brim and a tie, so that's available to you guys. So just make sure we're wearing, especially in those hotter regions, you guys want to have those shade hats. So everybody I've talked to really enjoyed those this year. So make sure you guys have those in the truck as well. I know this isn't the time of year to be talking about that, but we don't have these classes in the middle of July, so it's good. It's a good topic to talk about.
Okay. Last thing here, guys, I'll touch on this quickly. What's a realistic standard for vehicle cleanliness? We know sometimes it feels like you're living out of your van or your truck, not only parts, but lunch or whatever else going on in there. So as a company, we try to be realistic, about this standard. Those mobile offices are important to us, and keeping things, tidy, organized, and looking good is an important part of being professional. Al, any comments you'd add to that?
The only thing I will say, guys, is when we get vans back, when guys quit or when they leave, a lot of times they're super disgusting, and we have found mice living inside vans and trucks. So please clean out your wrappers at least once a week, maybe on Monday. Clean out your lunch bags or whatever, but let's try to keep that tidy. And I will say, when you go onto a customer site and you show up and you open up the back of your truck, if it looks like the last chapter of What's the Use and crap strung from Heck to Breakfast, people don't trust you as much as they do if they open it up and it's nice and clean and things are in its place. We're technicians. Have a high skill set for what we do. Let's try to emulate that in our vehicles and even, your tools when you go into a building. Don't just have a big bucket full of tools and throw them out on the ground and start trying to fish for the crescent wrench or the service wrench that you have. Try to keep things organized and clean. Look like you're a professional and not some handyman with a bunch of wrenches.
So I would say the standard for a van should be walking space down the aisle on the floor, unless you're packing equipment for that job. You should be able to walk through the middle of your van. And then if you're spending more than 30 seconds trying to find a part in your van, then it's not organized and it's not clean enough. So you should know where all your parts are in your truck, where they're at. We're not asking you to armor all the floors like some of you do, and I appreciate that, I do. But I mean, the standard is like that van is a tool. It's an organizational tool as well as a transportation tool. So we need to make sure that, we can get through the van from front to back in the back of that van. And we should be able to identify where our part that is needed for that job is at within, no more than 30 seconds.
Okay. All right, guys. I appreciate that and talking about, kind of a few different aspects of both professionalism as well as safety on some of the stuff. It's an important part of what we do, right? We're a literal boots on the ground, working with our hands type company. And so, the gear, the apparel, the equipment we have is important to us. So please, managers, push us down to your technicians, and let's have a good workplace here. I threw a few pictures on here that are admittedly goofy, but they're intentionally kind of goofy, right? So look through here, like this first dude, he's got a hard hat on, but Vans, and it just looks out of place, right? I won't comment on the overalls, but you can see kind of, what guys might look like in the field. These guys definitely look more like residential technicians, right? Which is fine. They have kind of a different standard. But and then this guy here, I just liked him a lot. But you can see how we want to be, a notch or two above these types of pictures in terms of what we look like when we show up on the job site or at a customer's facility. And looking the part is important to us. Real quick, some unwritten rules in the industry. The best technicians build relationships of trust with customers and coworkers. Here are some tips to build those relationships. If the opportunity is there, shake hands with the store manager and introduce yourself by name. They tend to appreciate that. The opportunity might not be there. They may be running all over or not present or whatever, but it's a good opportunity to shake their hand, and they'll appreciate that. Always thank customers for the opportunity to service their facilities. Typically when you're checking out or you need customer, sign off on your work order or whatever, great opportunity to thank them. And it's a privilege that they called us, right? And not somebody else. And so we should express that appreciation to be able to work for them. Leave the facility cleaner than you found it. This is an important one, whether it's a machine room or a rooftop or wherever you're at, we should leave that site cleaner than we found it, right? Even if you fix the equipment, you're the hero, you take care of it, it's back up and working, you shake the customer's hand and sign off and get on your way. And then that store manager looks over, and sees where you were working, and, there's some grease on the floor, there's a wrapper from your lunch or whatever. They'll immediately, lose all the good credibility that you just built up and be, have a poor taste in their mouth. So be conscious of that. Leave the facility cleaner than you found it. Be respectful of store employees, customers, and products throughout the facility. We're often working in places where business is open, right? And people are buying stuff and moving stuff and doing whatever. Just be conscious of what's going on around you. Try to be as small of a distraction as possible. Don't smoke or vape in a customer's facility or on the facility premises. Simple one to remember and to be conscious of. Stay away from jokes or comments about religion, race, politics, or sexuality. This probably goes without saying. We know what life is like in 2019, but be very conscious of these things and best to stay away from them.
Hey, Nick.
Yep.
I got a good one about a rabbi, a straight white guy, and a priest.
Tell you what, Al, how
Republican walk into a bar.
Yeah. I'm going to mute you right now if that's all right. Last one, this is an important one. Don't speak poorly about competitors or colleagues. Things tend to come full circle. The temptation is there to badmouth a prior service company that maybe was servicing that store before we did, say what type of a bad job they did and we're so much better, we're going to clean it up. Or maybe to express some frustration about a manager or central operations, to a customer. I strongly recommend not doing that. This absolutely comes full circle. Take the high road, and customers, coworkers, colleagues, managers, everybody will respect that. And in the long run, people always know, the cream will rise to the top, and people will see you if you're doing a good job. No reason to put others down to make yourself look better. It's absolutely not worth it. It's a natural human temptation, but not worth it. Al, Jim, anything we'd add here to this slide?
I think I was muted. Can you hear me?
You're back on. Your joke's done.
I would just say, guys, I've stood next to people and customers, drop some pretty choice language sometimes when they're frustrated or they're amped up because, they want their store back up and running. And I've seen out of joking nature, never maliciously, that we return that type of vulgarity back to the customer. I want to be a professional company. Let's make sure that we keep the language pretty clean with the leadership teams of our customer base. And then also, I've also caught a couple of guys talking poorly about others, and I just want to revisit that for a second. Let's make sure we never, ever, ever trash anybody in the company, whether it be the office or another technician. I've seen it happen too often, and every single time it's 100% fail rate that is going to come back to bite us in the long run. So let's just make sure that we really, really stay away from those two things. Using that type of language with store directors, or I've seen it at a lot of Maverick store with the management, and I know that they don't have sometimes don't have the nicest way of putting things or the cleanest way of putting things, but that doesn't mean that we return the favor. So let's just work on those two things. Those are just recently in the last couple of days or last couple of weeks, I've seen a couple situations where I wasn't too impressed with the way that we handled it. So let's focus on that with our interaction with the customer. It's a stressful time of year with the holidays. Sometimes we get some stressful language or some stressful reactions from our customers. Let's try to take the high road as much as possible and try to be a professional company with them and help them out where they need us.
Well said. Thanks, Jim. Last slide here, guys. A few notes on customer service before we wrap up. As technicians and managers, you are the face of the company. Please remember to always treat customers with respect. Here are a few tips. Recognize the customer's agenda. So are they in a rush or do they have time? So pay attention to their body language and what they're saying, either verbally or non-verbally, and try to be accommodating to that. Do they just want a high-level summary, or do they want all the details of what's going on? So recognize their needs and try to adapt your communication to them accordingly. If you don't know the answer to a question, customer or coworker, whoever has a question, you don't know the answer to, there's absolutely no shame in that. Don't make up an answer, right? Tell the customer or whoever, you'll find out and get back with them, right? You got a lot of lifelines in your service manager, in the central ops team, and others that you can find out answers and get back to them. But don't make it up. Don't BS them.
But please leave the "I don't know" line out, because that freaking wipes out every ounce of confidence that a customer has in you.
Yeah.
Just say, I will check into it and get back to you.
That's a great way to put it, Sean. Just really simply, let me find out for sure, and I'll get back with you, right?
Yeah, please don't. I've heard it time and time again. Please don't say, I don't know, I'm new here, I've never worked on that piece of equipment. That's probably not the best thing to say. So. Yeah, absolutely. Even if that is the case, just if you don't have the expertise, we certainly do within the company, and you've got the resources to find it. So just tell them you'll circle back with them.
And then lastly, we already touched on this, but always leave the customer's facility in better condition than you found it. If we can do these things, guys, people will appreciate it. The calls will keep rolling in, and there'll be as much work as you're willing and able to take down, which at the end of the day, we're all trying to, feed our families and take care of business. So this is an important part. And as I mentioned at the start, we spend most of our time in these training sessions talking more technically, about equipment, but there's another side of being a technician and working that involves, communication and professionalism and cleanliness and all those things. So don't forget about those things. The best technician is somebody that can do both sides of it. He can, fix the equipment, diagnose it, speak technically, but also can communicate with people and be professional and take care of things the right way. So Jim, Al, anything we want to close with? Or are you guys good?
No, I think you're good.
Okay. This class, guys, will happen again on Friday. Al will be leading it. It's the same format. So if you were on today, unless you just couldn't get enough, I wouldn't plan on dialing in on Friday. But for those that were not on for today, we wanted to have a second time slot that was more accommodating. So
mine will be a lot better.
It will be significantly better. You will also hear the joke he mentioned.
After hearing his comments today, you sure it's a good idea to have him lead the class?
That's
What?
That's a
Just
great
take
question,
just
Sean.
take it as what not to do. Tell your guys.
HR to be on.
That's very valid. Yeah, lead by example.
Yeah, it would be the reverse. Well, guys, appreciate it today. Everybody be safe out there. Cold winter roads, and at least up north it is. So be safe, do a good job, and have a great day.
All right, thanks, guys.